Joy, and welcome to my studio. Today we're working on our little owl. We'll call him Hoot the Owl. This is a really fun class. It's really simple and there's so much you can do with it. Just don't overthink it and put your own flair on it and have fun. Okay, let's get started with our supply list. I have a water container for our paint brushes. I also have waxed paper that we're going to use with our clay, and I have rubbing alcohol that we're going to use the clay off with. I put mine in a spray bottle to make it easier. The colors that I used, and I'm not going to give you exact names, we'll go into a little bit, but I want you to use what you have, is first start with a black, a burnt umber, a medium brown. Burnt umber can also be a dark brown, kind of a beigeish brown, as well as just a lighter brown. We're going to use like a straw yellow, an ivory, a white, and a pumpkin. So just real basic kind of colors there. We're going to use our vegetable spray, which can be a Pam or just any oil type of cooking spray to keep everything from sticking. Our regular craft scissors. We're going to be using a little amount of Quikwood. I think I used just about that much for one little owl, so not a lot at all. A plate to put your paints onto. I did use a couple of clay tools, but I'll also talk about alternatives like our hobby knife, a rake or a fan brush, and those are to make our fur. And I also used our wax tools, either a number 2 or number 3, to make the eyes with as we're working with those. And just real basic brushes, a liner, a small flat, a little bit of a round brush, and a floater. It can be an angle or a flat. Either one of those are good. I used a little bit of E6000. I have my pad for my hot glue gun, and I do have my palette paper, or you can use your paper plate or wax paper. My wire cutters, because I snitched a little bit of greenery. If you have greenery, that's fine, or you can take a little bit off of a garland or wreath like I did. And just a couple of real small pine cones of any kind, or anything that you want to decorate with. So come on, let's get started. The one thing I wanted to stress is make sure that you have taken the skin off the gourd, and this is a clean gourd. If you paint over it, that skin will eventually peel off. So make sure that you don't do that. But I didn't sand mine. I kind of like the roughness for the wild look, but if you want to sand it, you're more than welcome to sand it. There is no issue with that. Just make sure that you have the skin peeled off of that. So for the fur, we're going to be using a rake brush, and that is, it's got little rakes and it's cut off in between. You also could use a fan brush, and if it's just a old fan brush or an inexpensive fan brush, you could actually cut some in between to make it more like the rake. Just be really careful and only cut a few at a time. So that's what we're going to be using to make our fur, and I'm actually going to be doing the painting first, a lot of it, before I put the clay on. And you might not want to do it that way. You might want to do it the other way, and I'll leave that up to you. So we're going to be using burnt umber, which is the darker of our browns, to start making our fur. And I'm going to wet my brush just a tad, not a lot. If you will learn how to adjust your water on how you want it to go on. I want mine more solid color. If you wanted it not quite as solid, then you would put less water in it. And I'm going to take it from the center of the top of the head, and usually you have like a gourd piece or the stem sticking out there, and I'm just making a small wisp, and this is a 1/4 inch rake, in case you were kind of wondering. And you just want to start interlaying it here. I'm going to put that one in the middle so there's nothing in the middle. And it's so much easier to do it now than it is when you start to get all the clay stuff started to come on. But oh, we got nice thunder showers today. But we're going to start overlapping those. It's monsoon season in the mountains. So thank God for rain. So we're just going to keep on doing this all the way to the bottom. We don't want really long strokes because the fur in this guy is not really long. We want shorter strokes. Now those guys I had a little bit too wet. My color won't show up as much. It'll be lighter. So I don't want as much water in my brush as I had there. And I am just going to continue working that all the way down and just overlapping those just a little bit, but you don't want to overlap them so much where you're losing your underground color. If you have an area that you thought you got the paint too darkened and you want to lighten it up, just take your base color and put it back over the top of that, and that'll help blend that back to the back. So you do have some options on how to fix that. We're going to start with our lighter color now, and I'm going to use territorial beige, but you can either use a light beige or tan or light brown, whatever color that you may want to use or you have. And we're just going to do the same thing. Again, not too much that you're losing all your other colors underneath. And I am just going to interlock this just the way I did with the last one. And you're starting to see your fluffy fur. And I'm just going to work him all the way down again. I'm going to add a little bit of reflective light to where the roundest part of his body is, and I'm going to be using ivory, and this we want a little bit more watered down. We don't want this real vibrant. We just want to put a highlight in there without really knowing that we put a highlight in there. And we're just going to do it all the way around both of those areas, and you can see I'm actually making these about twice as long as those other strokes were, and we're just getting that nice reflective light. If you can see the strokes too much, then you're doing them too dark, and they should kind of be balanced out. They shouldn't just start like I've kind of got it going there. So go ahead and put those around both the top and the bottom. So now we've got our fur on our little guys, and he look real furry. So what we're going to do now is start with our Quikwood, and I got to give you a little Quikwood spiel just in case you've never worked with it. This is a product we carry at Miriam Joy and .com, and the reason I really like it is because it has a workable time of 30 minutes. It's rock hard in an hour. So while I'm working on this, it's basically when I'm going to the next part, it's going to get hard enough that I can continue working. So rock hard means rock hard in your jewelry. So the first thing you want to do is take off all your jewelry. This is actually wood repair epoxy putty. So it activates when you combine the two together, and there is our two, our light and our dark. And it's mixed 50-50, so you don't have to do anything to it. We just have to knead it, and the kneading is what activates it. In here are your instructions and your warnings and everything, so I always say take it out and please read it and follow all of those instructions there. I'm going to be using a vegetable spray, a cooking spray, Pam, anything that's kind of an oil based. It does not matter what brand or anything like that, but take this first part off and only work the small amounts that you want to be working with. Don't cut all of it off to be doing all of it at once. I have no problem keeping my Quikwood on without any adhesive at all. Being said, because it's wet enough, but if it starts to get hard, don't put it on your gourd, because that is when it will fall off. If it starts to get hard, throw it away and start all over. So cutting the small amounts is sometimes the hardest part, but for the wings, I want them a little bit bigger here, and it doesn't take a lot of Quikwood. Now, push that back on, put that back in. If I wasn't using it again, I'd put it back in my container and put on the lid, but I'm going to be using it again. But there is a piece of plastic around the outside of this, and you do not want to pull it off until you cut that piece off. That's what helps really keep it fresh. And we're going to knead this until it is one solid color, and it is also warm to the touch. So that's kind of important. You can see we still got colors in there. It's still marbleized, so we want to get rid of all the marbleize and just have it one solid color. And if it doesn't dry up on you, you didn't knead it enough. So that is so important. I can't stress that enough. And we're going to do all of this little guy pieces before we put his feet on, and that's the last part, and we can work up until then. So I'm going to roll it into a ball, and I kind of want like a tear shape piece, a little bit more for his wing, and I'm going to start shaping it in my hand first, and then I will put it onto his body. Think about where how the gourd sits, frontwards and backwards, where the nicest part of him is, and decide that. And we're putting it the crick of his wing and the crick of his neck. And I want to bring this wing down further, but you don't want it so farther that it's on the bottom part right here. You want to keep it above that, and then we're just going to push it on, and then we're going to start to shape it. And I've got mine pretty thick. It's not really thin. The more thin you get it, the less 3D effect you're going to have. Now I put my finger in just a tiny bit of water. You also can use the oil. That's up to you. And I'm smoothing it out, especially to remove my fingerprints. I get that nice smoothness there. And I'm going to use my favorite wax tool, or not, excuse me, clay tool, excuse me there. But I will also show you how you can do it with a hobby knife, and I'm just going to get the feathers in. That's how I am going to do it. I want to make sure I get around to the edges, and then like every other one, so that I can come back in on the next row and put them in between. There is no right or wrong on this. I do have the point going towards the bottom, but again, like I said, there's no right or wrong. If you just put them in, that's fine, however you think they should go. But I think that kind of gives it a real feathery effect. But if you only had your hobby knife, you could take the edge, and there is different tips as well that come with your package that you would get that same effect if you wanted to. And we do have those available on our website as well. And so I'm going to try and get this all the way up to the top, and then I'm just going to do it the exact same thing on the other side, and then I'm just going to do it half and half. But I'm going to try and get as close a shape as I can. It's not perfect, don't worry about it, and we'll pick it up from there. So we have our wings on, and I'm going to show you how to do the eyes, and I think I'm going to just leave the eyes down and let them dry instead of trying to put them on, because we can work with them so much easier that way. So if you ever have a piece of clay left over, just put it inside your wax paper like that, and then when you start a new piece like this, as long as it's not getting very hard, you can work it back in, and then it'll last longer, and you can work it back into that next piece and you don't waste it. So that's another little trick there. So see if I got these big enough. Sometimes the hardest part of these is to cut little pieces off. Now on these owls, I actually used acorns on their eyes. So if you have acorns that you would like to use, you can do that. But a lot of times you don't have that option, so I'm going to show you how to make them, but you would do it just the same way if you did have the acorns as I am doing them with the clay. So basically I'm just making the acorns themselves. So I'm going to try and split this in 2 equal pieces, and the easiest way to kind of tell if you have it the same is to roll it into balls, and then your balls should be pretty well similar in size. If not, just kind of work them back and forth until you do have them into that. Now I'm going to put these on my wax paper out of the way a little bit. So I'm spraying my wax paper with a little bit of vegetable oil, and a lot there, not quite as much. So we've rolled these into a ball, and it's so much easier to do it in my hand. So I am taking one of my wax tools, and you could use either the 2 or the newly resigned number 3 here, and you just start to turn it in circles here, and then roll this edge in your hand until you start to get that bigger. And you can keep on doing that until you think you have about the size that you want. And you want to try and get the sides as even as you can. And I am going to push this down a little bit. I'm trying not to lose my shape, so that we have that shape right there. Okay, so I am going to grab, you could use your hobby knife, you could use your business card, and I am going to lightly put some cross hatching. I'm going to go one way first, and then the other direction in just a minute, around the eye. And I'm trying not to push it too hard here, but just to get the kind of thing we would have in our acorn. So now I'm going to go the other direction. So I've kind of turned a bit as I was turning the corners here. So I'm trying to keep it the same. Okay. And I am going to come back in here just a little bit. I kind of like the flatter surface because it'll be easier to paint on later. Okay, so we don't want to spend too much time. If you're spending too much time, then you need to do these separate and not at the same time. So that's something to think about when you're making them. Maybe your first one you want to do by itself. See how big the holes are on our first one. And don't be afraid to roll it up in a ball and start all over. There is nothing wrong with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and complete this second eye. And you want to make sure that your eyes match the proportionate to your owl. So if you think that's too big and you want them smaller, then do those smaller. When you have the extra clay, you can actually start making the beak and the ears. And it doesn't take very much. And I'm kind of make a point with my fingers for the beak and a solid flat spot here. So I'm actually doing it here and here on the beak. So I have basically shaping 4 sides. And when I kind of get that shape that I like also to bend it down a bit, but I gotta figure out which was my front, which was my back here. Also make sure that you're leaving room for your eyes and get it in the middle between the 2 wings. But you don't want to crowd those eyes, and just put that on, and you can shape it some more once it's on. And then I take my hobby knife and I do a little bit of indentation on both sides of his beak to make the 2 pieces with my hobby knife. Just real simple there. Nothing hard. Nothing hard. This is not hard. This should be enjoyable. If you're not having a good time, you're trying too hard. And you can play with that a little bit as it's drying too. But we're going to basically do the same kind of thing with the ears. And I'm going to make sure I kind of have these about the same size. See how fast he's going together? He is going together fast. So I'm going to put this guy over there for now. And again, I'm going to kind of do the same thing with the ears here, but we're going to make them a little bit flatter on one side than the other. So I'm doing it here and then towards the back, so I get that point look. And make sure you have your ears spaced out enough, and you can even shape them once you get them on there, but they're not too close together. You don't want them too big. So I'm going to put them on the other side here. And these are towards the front, just a little, not quite back halfway. And I am going to do the same with them. You can use your hobby knife, or if you have your clay tool, you can use it to put your, I just put like some hair in there. And that's okay. I didn't really put him on, push him very hard. Now, if anything came off after it was dry, you can use E6000 to put it on. So we're just putting, I just do one in the middle and one on each side. I just keep it simple, and you also can kind of push this bottom back a little bit as well, so it kind of looks like it's more tucked in like the ears. The one thing I will tell you is don't overwork it. Leave it alone. You start to muddy it, as they say, so that's one thing to think about. Just keep it simple. So we've got those on pretty well. We've got our beak on, and so basically we're getting ready to do our feet. Before I go ahead and put my feet on, I want to get him as painted as much as I can. And our first feathers should be pretty good to go. And I kind of liked a golden color here. You can use the color that we do the feet or whatever you want. I'm going to use a golden brown. I probably will do the feet a little bit brighter with Empire Gold, but you may decide that you like both of them that gold, but that's up to you. I like to just have it stand out a little bit more. And the first thing I want to do is take my rubbing alcohol, and I'm going to put it on a cotton round. You could use whatever you want. And I'm just going to wipe whatever I am painting with a Quikwood off a little bit. Don't do the guys that aren't dry yet. But so this removes all of the oil. so that the paint goes on nice and even and you don't feel like it's coming off. And I'm just going to base coat these guys, and you want to make sure that you get up on the edge and get down in there all of those colors. Way down, and sometimes you have to look from different angles to make sure that you've got that all. And I'm only doing one coat of this. This is one of those colors that base coats really, really well. But if you, watch your guys, if you've got wet stuff, you don't want to touch it. But if you, we're going to do so much over the top of it. If you think that you need 2 coats, go ahead and do 2 coats. But we're going to put some fur on these guys as well. So while those guys are still drying, we're going to float some color. This can be called highlighting or shading. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but I will put up a video link that shows you how to do it in detail. And what I'm going to do is load my brush with part of the color and walk it off. And there is a certain thing to do with your brush and the water and different things like that. And we're going to do the color towards the darkest part of our wing here. And we're going to go all the way around our wing. And what that does is that brings the wing forward so it doesn't disappear into the body. So it looks like it's standing out. You don't want to go over the wet part that you've done, because it just lifts up the paint. You can go next to it and start where you left off. But if you need to go into it, you need to just wait and let that dry and then go back over that area again. So this is optional. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. I'll show you the difference between that one and that one. So you can see how it kind of moves it forward. I'm also going to do it smaller on my brush. I have smaller paint up against this area, and probably the best time to do this is after you've painted the nose. I was just trying to wait for the wood to dry up, or the clay to dry up a bit, so I may have to do that again after I base coat it. We'll kind of play that by ear, but that's something you can do while you're waiting for it to dry. And like I said, that is optional. It just makes it stand out a little bit more. I took little Q-tips and put my alcohol on it and just cleaned anywhere that my Quikwood had dried. So you want to kind of make sure that these are dry. I'm going to take my little eyes and I'm going to use my base color, whatever we did the body with. We're going to paint the eyes, but not the inside of the eyes. And then we're also going to paint our ears. We're going to base coat our ears and the outside of our eyes with our whatever medium color of brown that you used. And this is going to go on thick enough on this that I'm only going to need, I think, 1 layer. If you want to do 2, then you can do 2. We're going to go ahead and do his beak. And I'm going to do this in Empire Gold. You could do it in straw or a kind of a golden yellow. I want this a little bit brighter than my wings, but I want this to go ahead and start drying as well. So I'm going to put it on his nose. And I may need a couple coats of this. If you like the other gold better that we used on his wings, you can use that. There's no right or wrong, just whatever you prefer. Once his wing color is dry, we can go ahead and start putting the feathers on him. And again, I'm using a dark brown, which is our burnt umber, again with my rake brush. And we're just going to come over our little bumps here, and that's okay because they're not going to be perfect. They're going to kind of just be here and there. They're going to look different than our fur on our body because we do have it different. And make sure you kind of get this on the sides as well. And sometimes if you do it wet, it'll even come down into the kind of crevices that we made, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I just did the dark color only on my wings. I didn't do the light color. So go ahead and do that on both sides of your wings as well. So once we've got that on, I'm going to come back in with my liner brush here, and I'm just going to start in the corners of the little triangles that we made with our clay tool, and I'm just going to darken those up starting at the point just to make these look like more individual feathers here, not so fluffy like our body feathers that we have. And then what I kind of do is go one on one side, one on the other side, and then one kind of in the middle, and where it's kind of fanned out near the top of each one of those. Not too much, and each one of them can kind of look different. That is okay, but just to give them kind of that little bit more distinctive look, I guess, is what I'm after. So I'm going to do that to both sides of my wings. So I'm going to show you a little trick with the eyes here because it's on the inside. I'm going to take my fresh white and I'm going to take a Q-tip and load my paint up, and that way I can get in the sides of this and just push it around. Now any of the white that gets on the outside, you can clean it off with the nice end of your Q-tip, or you can wipe it or just paint it with brown in just a minute. So that probably needs 2 coats of white to get that nice and even, but that's kind of a trick to get that paint in there instead of trying to paint it with the paintbrush, which can be really hard. So let's go ahead and get our eyes done, and then we're going to start our ears. On our ears, you can use your light or your dark paint. It doesn't matter. You could use your rake if you want to put that in there, or you can use your liner brush. So I started with just a little bit of my dark brown color, and you may want it just like that. I'm going to play around with just a little bit of my lighter brown here. I don't know if I have any fresh still or not. I probably have just enough. And you may want that at the bottom or somewhere like that. So I almost like it, I think, just better just with the dark brown, but play around with that and see what you like. With a pumpkin or orange, we're going to float a little bit of color around the base of our beak. And it just needs a little bit. It does not need much color facing the inside of that. And the nice thing when you pick up an item like this, what makes it so special is attention to detail. So getting all these little details in here is what's really going to make yours really stand out. So think about when you're doing something like this, may it seem a little bit tedious, but that is where it really pays off, is by adding all of these little details in there. Now I did have just a couple of ones from when I base coated it, because we had done a base, or had done the float first for the dark. So I'm just gonna touch those up real quick here, and then we're going to use our dark color to finish up our beak. we'll use our liner back in our burnt umber, and we'll water that down just a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk it up those side parts that we made for his bill on both sides, and then I'm going to go a little bit more straight paint, and I'm going to set it down. This is what we call a pudmuckle. This would be his nostrils right there. Oops, not fresh enough. Let me try a different spot there in my paint. Just set your brush down there and there. Try to make them the same size if you can. So we basically have them all done except for his eyes, and we're waiting for those to dry. So we're going to go ahead and do his feet now. And we're going to do them on our wax paper because it's so much easier to make them on the wax paper and then put them on. And you'd rather have your feet a little bit thicker and bigger. And so we're going to do both of them hopefully at the same time here. You can see how much Quikwood. I started with a little thing like that. We only used about that much Quikwood. So these go a long ways. It doesn't take a lot. The feet and the wings are the biggest part of it. Now the thicker those are, the feet, the nicer they stick to everything. So we want to kind of have them nice and thick here. Okay, and I'm going to divide this in half. Try and get it equal here. See if those look pretty even, maybe just a little bit there. So I am going to make another teardrop kind of shape again. And do this up out of the paint a little bit here. Make sure we can see that well. And we're going to kind of start to push it. I'm trying to do this where I can keep my hand out of it the best I can in that teardrop shape. And then I'm going to take my hobby knife and cut it into 3 pieces for the toes. Try to get those as even as I can here. And we're going to bring those out. And on this middle one, you can either cut it or you can play with that a little bit. That's up to you to kind of get that to a point. And we're just going to bring those a little bit like that. Now I'm going to finish shaping those when I get those on to the gourd in the wood piece, but we want to put these side by side because we want to put them onto the gourd at the same time. So kind of got that one at that angle there, so I'm going to make this one. Let's start again here. Okay, see, I can roll it up and start all over again too. That'll be pretty good by the time we get it going here. And they don't have to be perfect. I know that guy probably looks a little bit bigger than the other one, but you could also trim it there if you wanted to. So, I am going to take my bird and we want to smash him down, trying to bring him around here where you can see him with his feet out in the middle of the front. We're going to pick those up, and I'm pushing into him really good. And we're going to lift this up off of the wax paper and keep those on the gourd. Don't feel bad if you kind of have to pick them up and move them individually. That's okay. I'm going to get these guys separated so it doesn't look like 6 toes so much up here. So I've got them going the different directions. But the one thing we want to do, I want to kind of show you what it would look like on a little wood slice here. See how cute that would be just sitting on the wood slice. And then a couple of greenery pieces, and we'll talk about the greenery pieces in a minute here. But what I want with this one is I want him to kind of sit well on this. And if you need another big piece of Quikwood underneath it where it sits, don't be afraid to add that if we needed a piece right there. But see, his little paws should go down and sit on whatever item. They should not be flat out. You don't want to let them dry and just have them be flat. That is real important. Otherwise you just have feet sticking up in the air. You can bend these over the side however you think you want to do them. So what I want to do now is I'm going to put my detail in this, and I want to add a nail to these. So it looks like a nail. So I want that one more deeper to show up more than I want the other lines that I'm going to do here. And if there's any part that need cleaned up, clean it up. And then I'm going to do a couple of lighter ones, just coming down from the body a little bit. Not too dark. This is just another wax tool. But make sure your bird is sitting the way you want him to. I think I need to put another piece of clay behind him. And then I'm going to do just like 3 little lines on each side of the foot or nail, each kind of nail part here. I don't know what these are called. So I'm just kind of doing that. On each one. I think I am going to go back with my Quikwood and put some more base behind him, because I am worried about just him being just not quite connected as sturdy as he could be. So I'm going to take this little piece of Quikwood that I have, and I'm going to tuck it up under him to make him a little bit more stable here. And you can color this to match the wood, or you can do, if it wasn't quite as much as it is, we could also do a little part here. And I forgot his tail. On my other ones I did add a tail, so I think I will cover that and match the wood, and then we will go ahead and add the tail. I can't believe I forgot the tail. So I want to watch this guy and keep him now more back on that Quikwood part than on the feet, so he stands straight up and down now. To do the black eyeballs, and I didn't put the yellow lines in these. If you want the yellow lines, just use the yellow that we used either on the feet or on the wings, and just add some lines to them. That's up to you, but I'm going to try this one with just out the lines. And you want fresh paint, and we're going to use our bigger wax tool to get a bigger circle here, and we're just going to put that in and see how big our circle is going to be here. And we may have to just move it out a little bit, so we'll take a look at at that as we start to put it in here. Decide where you want it to go into the eye and where you want the eyes kind of to be. So I'm going to go to the bottom of mine with this a little bit, but I want a little bit of workable room so I can move it around to get a bigger circle there. And that may take a little bit of practice. Don't be afraid to have to do it a couple times and paint the white again and start over. Wipe it out the best you can with a Q-tip and start it again if you need to. And don't make them absolutely perfect. That's all right as well. So I've kind of got mine on there, and I'm going to let that dry, and we'll add some reflective light to that. So we're going to very carefully go back and base coat our feet now. Make sure you wiped them off with the alcohol so that they're nice and ready to go here. And I'm just going to use that straw color yellow again. And depending on how they cover, if you want 1 or 2 coats, and just going to do that. And then I'm also just going to show you what I'm going to do with that back part real quick. So I'm just going to get a kind of a quick layer on here, and I'll go back and clean that up in just a second. But on this back part, I want this to match more of the wood. So I'm going to come in with my burnt umber here. If you did this on a flat piece, you wouldn't need this. So, and I'm probably going to use my, oops, I got the black and not the brown. That's what I wanted to highlight it with. So, you also can add a little bit of water to it if you think the color is too dark. But I think I'm going to do that. It'll blend in pretty well. I'm going to use my fan brush here real quick to show you. I'm going to get this all blended up. And then I'm also going to cover it up with some of my little greenery as well. So, and his tail. We're going to put his tail on. Gotta have his tail. I like his tail. I think it just needs it. So I'm just going to dampen my fan brush and put it into my black. You could use the rake too. There's no reason you don't have to. And just kind of line that down right into the wood. So that does a pretty good job of matching there, don't you think? So go ahead and get those feet based, and we'll get them covered up. The nice thing about working on a little project like this, there's always something to keep dry and keep you moving. So we're going to come in with a fresh pile of white. We're going to do a little comma stroke in our eyes, and if you need to hold it up or lay it down, whatever, and you're just going to push and pull and bring that down from one side of the eye to the other here. And unfortunately it's not quite smooth, and then I'm going to add a little dot right there, and I want to do the same thing on the other eye, same position here. Hopefully you can see through my fingers, and just slide that down and a little dot to add that reflective light. And this is kind of what gives it its character. Don't worry about them being perfect. As you can see, the eyes aren't perfect. And we're going to go ahead and do our little lines that we did, the cross hatchings. Just take your burnt umber and just go in those lines wherever they are around your eye. Go ahead and do both eyes, and then by that time hopefully our feet will be dry.